Hello everyone, Theology 101, and some people have asked me to respond to the full video. Some of them don't think I can, others want to hear my thoughts. Some people are just like, oh, blah blah blah, yada yada yada, and other reasons. So, I have the Amazing Atheist video in audio. I'm not going to use his video, just a title that says The Amazing Atheist, and you'll hear his voice. So, let's begin.
Aquinas' first argument, motion. 1. Objects are in motion. 2. If something is in motion, then it must be caused to be in motion by something outside of itself. 3. There can be no infinite chain of movers, movies. 4. So there is a first unmoved mover. 5. Therefore God exists. His third premise, that the chain of movers and movies cannot be infinite, is just not justifiable. How the fuck does he know? We don't understand infinity. The human mind can't understand that concept. We don't understand that concept today, yet Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century somehow was able to grasp infinity and declare what can and cannot be infinite.
Well, turtles all the way down doesn't work. Eventually, you have to come to a point where one of the turtles is resting upon something. Now, even if we're not using Planck time, I still don't understand how you can avoid this. Eventually, everything has to rest upon something. This is the most intuitive conclusion we can form based on what we see and observe with cause and effect relationships. Now, if you want to theorize and hypothesize that maybe there's some other form of time and that there's an infinite regress and somehow it's possible, then sure. But if you want to go against your senses, then what else are you not going to trust about reality? We have to be careful about what we say is true and is not true, because sometimes saying something is not true, it might entail a death sentence for empiricism, so to speak. So, I suppose I've heard a lot of people argue against me whenever I say this and appeal to all these different forms of time, but I don't really see them being substantiated. And when I say substantiated, I mean I don't really see how they ever resolve this problem by postulating these ideas. They just seem to be trying to play some type of semantics game with what time is. And I'm not really interested in semantics. I think you understand what I'm talking about.
His fourth statement, that there is therefore an unmoved mover, is just fucking ridiculous. First of all, it contradicts his second premise, that unless an object is acted upon by another object, it cannot be in motion.
Okay, I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. Contradiction with his second premise? Who said this was in motion? If it's omnipresent, it can't technically be in motion because it's everywhere. So, I guess you're just proving my point. Thank you, by the way.
It's also based on the assumption that there can be no infinite chain of movers and movies, which we already established is pretty fucking absurd, especially for some moron living in the 13th century with no concept of modern science.
You have to be careful about what you say in these types of videos, because if you say that it is possible for an infinite regression, then the question who created God becomes meaningless, because there can be an infinite regress of gods creating gods. According to your logic, that is technically possible. If there is a God, it is technically possible according to your logic. So if someone uses a teleological argument, for example, then you can no longer object to this argument and say, oh, well, God would have to be just as purposeful or more as his creation, or have the concept of God would have to have the appearance of design just as much or more so as his creation. Therefore, there would be an infinite regress, and that's not possible. See, you atheists always use this objection, and it doesn't make any sense to me, because you act as if this is some type of disproof of God, that there can't be an infinite regress. Who created God? And then whenever you are asked the same question, you go, oh, but that assumes that infinity is impossible. Your objection is wrong. And then you turn right around and use the same objection. So obviously you guys just don't even believe your own arguments, it seems. And I'm not trying to be offensive, it's just, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
So this argument is crumbling, it's falling apart, it's collapsing under the weight of its own arbitrary rules. And then there's his conclusion. Therefore, God exists. This is, let's say we accept everything he said before. This is still not a valid conclusion. Because why is the unmoved mover necessarily God? Why can't it be a blueberry muffin?
I'm going to ignore the fact that you said blueberry muffin and assume you mean something bound by time, because blueberry muffins are bound by time and nature. So since you didn't provide me with a better example that would refute the argument, I'm just going to stick with the properties of the blueberry muffin and just not use that specific example because it's kind of stupid. But something bound by time cannot create time for the same reason. Something bound by natural laws cannot create natural laws or tune natural laws. Something bound by cause and effect cannot be unmoved. It cannot be a mover. It can be a mover, but it itself must be moved. So your example doesn't really make much sense.
Why can't we say, yeah, there was an unmoved mover, it was a blueberry muffin?
Because blueberry muffins are material, and something unmoved that is a mover, that is going to cause all physical events to start, cannot itself have physical properties, because that would be counterintuitive to the process it is starting. Now, if you want to say the concept of the blueberry muffin is what you're talking about, and the concept of the blueberry muffin is immaterial, then cool. So I guess you concede on immaterial, concede on unmoved mover, and we'll just keep going on how many different things you concede until your blueberry muffin eventually transforms into God with all these concessions.
And from it came all other things. Sounds a little bit more plausible than God to me, because hey, I've seen a fucking blueberry muffin. Those motherfuckers are tasty.
It's more plausible because you've seen it? Actually, there are things that are more plausible than things we see. For example, my mind exists is more certain than anything I see existing, because our senses are derived from our mind, or not necessarily derived from our mind, but our mind processes the information that we see. So even if what I'm seeing is false, we can save a step and say it is more certain that the mind exists, because even if we are being, our senses are deceiving us, there is still something to be deceived. So that is more certain than something we see. So that principle is flawed. Also, if you're going to concede that there was a first cause, as you said you were going to do for the sake of argument, then it can't be anything you see that is more plausible, because obviously this would have to be immaterial if it's going to be a cause to all material things. So anything you observe is pretty much ruled out by necessity. B necessitates A, because the consequent affirms the necessary antecedent. Now remember, Aquinas' premise, his motion premise, states that natural things are set in motion by other natural things. The point of the unmoved mover is to demonstrate that because all natural things are set in motion by other things, and if there must be an unmoved mover, then this unmoved mover cannot be natural, because natural things are set in motion by other things, so therefore by definition it cannot be natural. So yeah, that's why. Although the antecedent doesn't necessarily follow from that, the consequent, but since we know the consequent, what we see around us, what we observe, therefore the antecedent, which in this case would be immaterial and not natural. So that's logic that is demonstrable, and it is not based upon our senses. Well, it's based upon our senses, but it is not something we observe. We observe the consequent. So I guess that, in and of itself, would be something that goes along with your principle that we must observe something. And from logic, we can still derive the same conclusion. So, yeah.
I ain't never seen God. I don't know what he tastes like. Probably like sour milk. Aquinas' second argument, causality. 1. Some events cause other events. That argument is exactly the same as your motion argument. I'm not refuting the same argument twice.
You're not going to refute it a second time? Wait. You refuted it a first time? When? When was that? No, I'm just kidding.
Moving on. Aquinas' third argument, contingency. 1. Contingent things exist. Yes, like the Earth is reliant upon the sun to sustain life on Earth. In other words, our existence is contingent upon the sun's existence.
And your YouTube channel is contingent upon your humor and not your intellect. Okay, I'm done taking cheap shots, but I have to be playful if you're going to be playful.
2. Each contingent thing has a time at which it fails to exist. Contingent things are not omnipresent. Well, let's think about it like this. If you are editing a video on your computer, which is obviously something we do a lot of around here, then you need the video files and you need the editing software. Both of these things have to be there in order for you to edit a video. You can't edit a video if you have no video. You can't edit a video if you have no video editor. Both of those things are contingent upon one another, and the final product, the edited video, is contingent upon you having both of those things. But even if both of those things are gone, if you have the hard drive capable of sustaining either of them, then they could both conceivably come back into existence. You can get new video because it can be sustained by your hard drive. You can get a new editing software because it too can be sustained by your hard drive. So, if there is a higher contingency, then these lower contingencies can always flicker in and out of existence. It doesn't matter if one goes away for a little while, it can come back because the conditions under which it could exist are always going to be there.
Not necessarily. You forgot to ask the next question. Because the final product, the video, is contingent upon those two things. But you're failing to understand that those other two things are contingent upon something else. This is what the argument is trying to demonstrate, but I don't think you're exactly understanding what it is trying to demonstrate. So I'm not exactly seeing where this objection is coming from. Maybe if you elaborated more, but I don't think you're going to respond to me, so I guess this is where it ends.
3. So, if everything were contingent, there would be a time at which nothing exists. Call this an empty time. Not accurate, because as we already talked about, all you need is the higher contingency that supports everything else. In this case, existence itself.
Existence itself is not an actual entity. Existence describes something, such as if something has properties, then it exists. You can't have just existence by itself and there be no properties, nothing at all, just existence. What is just existence? What is that? That is nothing. Existence is existence. Oh, what is existence? I can say this is exists, but it's not existence. This phone exists, but it's not existence. Existence is not an actual thing. It's what something, the state of something.
As long as there is a universe, you can always have stuff in that universe. The universe is a place where you can put stuff.
Okay, so you're saying the universe is not contingent. How is the universe not contingent again? You believe the universe is eternal or something? That's weird. Now remember what you just said, because it's going to come back to bite you in the ass.
4. That empty time would have been in the past. Well, assuming linear time, and assuming that all of your premises up till now are correct, sure. But how do you know?
Well, you just said it yourself. What do you mean, how do you know? If his premises up until now are correct, then that empty time, or that empty space would have been in the past. And since it doesn't exist in the past because something cannot come from nothing, then that outrules that possibility. It's just a rule of logic. He's not actually saying that nothing existed in the past. He's not saying that. He's not actually saying that. He's ruling it out.
We don't know of any such time. We do know of a time, and time might not be the right word here, but there was a time at the beginning of the universe.
Oh. So now there's a beginning to the universe. So the universe is contingent upon something. Interesting. Sounds like you just refuted yourself.
When all matter was compressed into something roughly the size of a particle, this was prior to the Big Bang, although prior might not be the right word since time didn't exist until the Big Bang happened.
Is anyone feeling an immense amount of frustration at the fact that this guy was arguing, saying that infinite regresses were possible, and now he's arguing for the Big Bang, saying there was a state of timelessness, and now there isn't? I don't even know what to say. I just don't know what to even say right now. What the fuck? Just what the fuck? If you're gonna start saying that there's this first event and there's an expansion of space and there was no time before the Big Bang, but earlier you're going to say that maybe there was an infinite regress, just at least pick one position. You have like 52 different positions you can pick. Just pick one of them. Pick a card, any card, and just stick with it instead of this inconsistent drivel. Now, I know what atheists are thinking. Oh, you're just being dogmatic. No, I'm just saying pick a position. That doesn't mean you can't change your mind. Just don't contradict yourself in the same video. There's a whole bunch of different theories going around. Some physicists say our universe was created by colliding with another. But eventually you have to get to a foundation. You can't just have universes colliding with other universes that are contingent. And then others say that the universe came from nothing, which is what this premise states anyways, and so on and so forth.
Although happened might not be the right word, it's all very fucking confusing. The point is, there's no grounds for making this statement. 5. If the world were empty at one time, it would be empty forever, a conservation principle. Maybe, but you don't really know that. And you've yet to sufficiently convince me that the universe was ever empty.
Okay, maybe we don't know per se, but are we more rationally justified? Now, we've yet to convince you. Okay, who fucking cares? Appealing to your own incredulity is an easy way to lose a debate.
6. So if everything were contingent, nothing would exist now. Well, that's an awful big leap. In your first premise, you say everything could be contingent. Now you're saying everything is contingent. So that's an awful big leap, first of all.
What the fuck are you talking about? His argument was from the fact that he observed in nature that natural things were contingent. And this argument allows for the possibility that there was no beginning in time, so you can compare and contrast it with the other one, and while your objections might, and I'm saying this with a huge leap of faith, might be sufficient to refute one argument, when you use it to refute one argument, you're just opening the door to the other one. So you have to kind of put them together. Now, I have no idea what you're talking about. This is talking about natural things being contingent.
But, you know, it only takes one thing that isn't contingent upon anything else.
Congrats, you finally figured it out. Good job. A+. You get a gold star, TJ.
Let's say that even in the void, even in the desolation, blueberry muffins could come into existence.
Whoa, you just came up with an axiomatic rule of logic. Let's just say, let's put let's say in front of a sentence, and then insert a proposition, and then instantly it's a possibility. That instantly entails that it is possible. We don't have to substantiate that it's possible, but we'll just say let's say, and then insert a proposition, and then that will refute every argument because it's possible. So let's just say that God exists. Let's just say that, and then that's going to be true. I'm just the best philosopher ever because I can just say let's say something and then insert something. It's just such an awesome rule of logic, and it works every time.
And then everything that is contingent upon blueberry muffins could come into existence. And then everything that is contingent upon the contingent things of blueberry muffins could come into existence. And so on and so forth until everything is here.
No. What? So you conceded on the void. You conceded on nothing. And then you're just randomly asserting that from nothing, blueberry muffins appear. And then from that, a bunch of other contingent things appear from blueberry muffins, which are contingent on nothing. So something is contingent on nothing. What? That doesn't... What? Something is contingent on nothing. Something is contingent on nothing, but nothing is the thing that is not contingent. So you're saying everything is contingent upon nothing, because everything ultimately comes from nothing. So everything is contingent on nothing. Wow. That's quite a philosophical argument you got there. Amazing. It's just like godlike. That's literally what you're saying. You're saying something is appearing out of nothing. And then, what the fuck are you talking about? And I have no idea what is going on.
All thanks to blueberry muffins. Aren't they fucking special? Isn't that just the best blueberry-laden breakfast treat you've ever fucking seen? Creating all things? Isn't it fucking wonderful?
Don't you just love that? Don't you just love bare assertions? Aren't they just the best fucking fallacy ever? Aren't they just so fucking awesome?
7. But clearly the world is not empty. Premise 1. Sure. 8. So there exists a being who is not contingent. Well, why does it have to be a being?
Well, why does it have to be a being? Well, what is a necessary cause for the consequent? Must be immaterial. Cause to all matter. It must be unbound by time. If it's going to start time, as you conceded earlier and said that there was no time before the Big Bang, it must be unchanging. It must be omnipresent, because if it's omnipresent, then it can't move. It would be unmoved, as you said earlier and rightfully pointed out, allowing me to demonstrate that. How many more attributes do I have to list before you are convinced? Of course, this doesn't demonstrate omnibenevolence or any type of religious God or any of that stuff, but I was never advocating that position in the first place, so it doesn't matter.
We've already discussed my blueberry muffin hypothesis.
Oh yeah, and look where that got us.
But even discarding both of ours, doesn't a single particle seem more likely than an entirely formed sentient consciousness capable of acts of spontaneous creation?
An entirely formed sentient consciousness. However, you don't explain the cause to this consciousness, you just say consciousness. You see, God would be all in one essence. He's not material, so he's not part upon part. You see, complexity in nature is derived from a bunch of parts interacting with each other. But you see, God's consciousness isn't produced by some neurons interacting with each other, just as ours is. So it's, in fact, it wouldn't even be one particle. So also, if you wanted to properly refute Aquinas, you could have done a little bit of reading and discovered this out, or found this out, that he did in fact endorse divine simplicity. And also, it doesn't even matter what seems likely, because we have what we have now in order to extrapolate and know what would be necessary to cause what we have now. So this whole appeal to what seems more likely, it's unsubstantiated and there's no point to it. How do you know what the default state of existence is? You're going on and on about how this guy doesn't know anything about modern science, and here you are making metaphysical claims that you can't substantiate at all, besides giving your opinion on them.
And in dire need of some explaining itself. How did this being come to be?
How did it come to be implies some type of temporal, I don't know, cause and effect almost. It's like, how did it come to be implies a past event where there was nothing, and then he came to be who he was, and there's these chain of events. That's a false question. But also, even if that was a true question, or if it had some merit to it at all, it's a worthless question, because if we logically demonstrate something, and I'm not saying we logically proved anything, but if we can demonstrate something is likely to exist, well, you don't have to give an explanation for that, because in order to understand that something is the best explanation, you don't have to give an explanation for it. Otherwise, we don't use that explanation. Because I said this in my last video. If we saw a book and it contained English words in it like dog and cat, the explanation to that would be someone who knows English wrote the book. But imagine an atheist walks by and he says, I want to know where this English-speaking person came from and where he was born. How did he come to be this person that spoke English? And then the person says, I don't know, I just see the consequent, and the consequent affirms or necessitates the antecedent, which would be this English-speaking person. And the atheist goes, no, where did he come from? And then you're just like left sitting there like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? You know, so many atheists think that if they can ask a question, then that somehow negates the truth value of a certain claim. And it's so absurd. I don't understand how you can get away with that. But it stumps some people, so I guess you can win an argument with someone who doesn't know how to respond, but that's about it.
9. Hence, God exists. You failed to demonstrate why existence itself can't be the ultimate contingency.
Existence is not a predicate. Existence can't exist by itself apart from any other thing.
You failed to demonstrate that there would necessarily need to be something that isn't contingent upon anything else.
How did he fail to demonstrate that? So you basically said that there is no thing at all that is not contingent? So you're saying everything is contingent? Okay, everything is contingent upon everything else, and then contingent some more.
And you never demonstrated that if that thing needed to be a being, it would be the Christian God.
Well, too bad I don't have to demonstrate it was the Christian God, because really, quite frankly, I don't give a fuck what God it was. But, yeah, it's just a God. There, happy.